MG, tell us the big news.
Man, so excited. I think most of the listeners have seen it, and thank you to everyone who sent me a delightful message. So many lovely people out there. But yes, Meave and I are expecting our first child, little girl due February, which is amazing. We couldn't be happier.
I'm so happy for you, bro. Like
Thanks,
when
man.
we obviously heard the news a little bit earlier, and
Definitely.
when we found out, we were so happy for you guys. So, and
Yeah.
it's funny because obviously the last two podcasts ago, we are talking about pregnancy, and we're
Yeah.
just all smiling like,
Not on purpose either, but I
I
just
know.
questions.
And we're all smiling because we know underlying what the news is. And then in last week's podcast, we're talking about inner circle and things that you tell people that are close around you. And we all had a little bit of a smirk on our face. But yeah, congratulations to you and me. That's super exciting. How did you make the announcement to the fam?
We did it separately. I think Meave posted some videos online about how we told them that we were having a girl. Meave and I obviously already knew at that point. We wanted to find out as quickly as possible. I'm so pumped to have a little girl, and spoiler with all things pink. But we brought my parents over for dinner, and similar to Maeve's parents actually, and kind of just had like little boxes prepared with some cute little baby stuff in it that said, another addition to the family. And are you ready to be grandparents? For Maeve's parents, it's so exciting. For both parents, it's so exciting. But for Maeve, Maeve's mum and dad, it's their first grandchild. So a very, very special time for them. My sister's got three, but there's a big gap. I think my sister's youngest, Sebi, will be 8. So pretty substantial gap between baby Jew and the last one. So they're equally as excited. And you guys know my mum and dad. They've been waiting for a little while, and equally for me and I, we've also been waiting for a little while. So we're very excited. Sometimes you feel like it's not going to happen for you, and you convince yourself of that, and you become really good at it too. So it was definitely some news that we've been wanting for ages, and we're ready. We're ready to be parents. We're just talking about carrying her in a baby Bjorn at the gym while we're doing sessions face to face, and getting a little kids area, a little mat that she can roll around on the back, and it's all happening. But you guys have seen on my Instagram, I have been shopping already, and I've got a wardrobe full of sweet little dresses and onesies and shoes already. And I know I need to slow down because it's only early days, but I'm just so excited, man.
I know, even just seeing you at the airport, you were like going into stores, buying little things. I was
I
like, this
did. Didn't
guy's
I?
out of control.
Actually, I did, and Candace was there. I bought me, my wife, and our little baby Jew a matching Peter Alexander pink pajama set in the sweetest little gift boxes. There's so many sweet things available for babies, and even you and I, MT, when we went shopping for Scotty's birthday present, you were picking up some baby Jordans and like showed me as well. So
Yeah,
it becomes infectious, doesn't it?
it does. I can't wait. I can't wait to meet her. I can't wait for her to join the crew when we go to Suvo's. Yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah, man. So great news. But thanks everyone who reached out. I got so many beautiful messages, and I really, really do appreciate it.
So obviously a big year for you next year.
Huge.
Um, Obviously prepping too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Lots
so
happening.
it's going to be a big year. It's going to be interesting. You've actually got one of your current clients, James. He's in the midst of prep, and his wife gave birth recently too. How's he doing?
Yeah, man. Well, he just conducts himself like a professional.
Mhm.
I know like, as he says, he is hungry, he is tired, but there's definitely something about having your first newborn that just forces you to level up. And he's had to make some changes. And I think for anyone out there who's in that same position, the thing you can take away is like, yeah, you're gonna have to make some changes. You may have to train at different times. One of the things that James did is started training a lot closer to home.
Mhm.
So instead of training at my gym, started training at just like a 24/7 gym, which is on the end of his street, just to be closer and to save a little bit of time. So he's had to make a lot of changes, but he still hasn't missed the beat. I suppose the goal's still big, and he's able to make arrangements with his partner about how he's going to fit all of it in, and he's going very, very well. No doubt, a little bit more sleep deprived. And if you look at his tracker, it's pretty evident that less sleep is resulting in some changes in his biomarkers. So hunger probably a little bit higher because he's not sleeping as much, and energy lower for the same reasons. And equally, I think stress creeps up a little bit too, purely from missing sleep. And if you think about it, and I said this in someone's check-in this morning, if your average sleep for last week was 7.5 and this week it's 6, sounds like 1.5 hours, but you cross that across 7 days, and there's a whole day you haven't slept for the week. So like it can really start to accumulate on you. So they're the little things that we're trying to manage. Equally with someone like James, we started prep a little bit earlier and we got a little bit ahead of the game, so we could allow for a little bit of time where food was a little bit higher through the birth, and then for the weeks following, where we took a little bit of a sort of maintenance break or a diet break, if you like, which allowed him a little bit more to work with when he had to be a little bit more planned with his eating. So, but all's ended well, and as soon as we got back into a deficit, he's back to his lowest weight straight away. So
That's awesome. What's his first show? Is it A&B?
A&B, yeah.
Got to get the whole fam up on stage, I reckon.
Yeah, it'll be awesome, man. He's got a crazy width and crazy lat spread, so. But it just shows you it can still be done. Definitely, it's definitely not easy, but it's absolutely achievable if you want it bad enough. As anything that's available to you, if you want it bad enough, you will find a way.
Definitely. And we had the A&B Queensland workshop over the weekend, went up to sunny Queensland, sunny Brizzy. I know Scotty was absolutely loving it. He was looking forward to the weather. And then we sat outside up top. They got like this outdoor area at the gym. And Scotty he was in bliss. He was absolutely loving it. And then we had a really, really good training session too. And then we got to the workshop. It was good to meet some more of the peeps again and go through the workshop. And then we chilled out. Scotty had his shake that he was dying to have at World Gym make on the spot there. And then we had to say goodbye and we had to go back to cold Melbourne.
Although getting off the plane, I think we were all looking forward to it. That was one of the most stuffiest flights. I don't know whether it's just sitting next to two mass monsters for 2 hours that was raising my body temperature. I think at one point we all moved seats, didn't we?
We did. We all got
into the back row. I stayed where we were. So that fresh air getting back to Melbourne was like, oh, I absolutely needed that. But the flight home actually took it out of me.
Bad. Yeah.
Yeah. I know, we saw Scott. Scott did some posing for us. And, no one posted any of those photos. We're so close now, it's going to all stay under wraps. But fair to say that Scott is on the brink of being 100% ready. I've never seen abs striations like you've got. Don't get me wrong, I've seen striations all over someone's body, but you have the skin on your abs is so tight, man. When you hit that front pose, that skin just striates. It's absolutely incredible. And your back double, when people get a chance to see your stage shots for your upcoming comps, that your back double versus your last back double. And let's bear in mind, guys, Scott's last back double was national pro champion worthy, but it's tenfold better now. So it just shows that you've spent a lot of time working your absolute ass off in silence without having to post a ton and looking for any sort of feedback from people. You've just been busting your ass, doing your SD, your stiff-legged deadlifts in the gym at, double your body weight, grinding day in, day out. And, it's only in moments like that, bro, when you're with a couple of your mates, you take your shirt off, you go through some posing, and we get to see it in the flesh, that we're able to say to you, man, you have absolutely utilized your last 2 years to every possible percentage that you could have. And sometimes you can be grinding away in silence for 2 years before there's a moment where someone can actually take notice of what you're doing and say to you, man, you have fucking dominated, man. So I can't wait to see your first show. I can't wait to see that physique carved up and tanned, because equally when we trained on Saturday, you had 9 low days in a row. Is that right? 8 or 9 low days in a row. So glycogen was virtually non-existent. I know you did your best to have some carb in the morning, but that would have been gone by our first exercise, the way that we trained on Saturday. Yeah. So that topped up and tan, man, is going to be something so special. And I can't wait to get that shot put on my wall at the gym so I can have it in my background every day.
Oh, thanks, bro. No, I'm looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to it. It's one of those things, I think, when you strip it back and you have a look, like you said, it's not just, I think so many people in this day and age, everyone with anything health and fitness wants a quick fix, but in reality, it's just doing the basics day in, day out, but it's that element of consistency and, no shortcuts, no mistakes. Equally, I think you boys would both probably attest to that's the message that I've been giving you. Mainly because I've been living it vicariously in terms of my prep. You're seeing the fruits of your labor when you strip it back. And we spoke about it with you boys when you guys did a little bit of posing as well, about how when you pull that back, those big hip hinge compounds have so much carryover in terms of overall added density and new contractile tissue to the posterior, that you just have to keep making those deposits, because when you get into prep, you pull it back. That's really when you get to celebrate those wins, and you can see. And sometimes you don't realize until, like you said, you pull up that photo from your last prep to now, and it's like, wow, you've made some progress.
Yeah. And I think the other thing, man, that really stood out is the amount of tissue that you've added to your upper chest. And, it's something that we talk about all the time is, it's pretty rare for someone to have just a super voluminous upper chest. And I know that you do a lot of work. What would you say has been, some of the biggest contributors other than patience time and obviously adhering and overloading your training and your nutrition, exercise specific to the density you've added to that upper chest, man?
I think that was an area, I think, as any physique athlete, especially for men's physique, you've got to have a really strong rear double and you need to be strong in your side shots as well. And so knowing that I wanted to bring up the rear, also knowing that I had to bring up the front. So I think it was probably more around biasing exercise selection. So for a lot of time, like even when we trained on the weekend, instead of just diving straight into like a heavy press straight away, really, factoring in good quality proprioception. So like 2 really, really good kind of high volume sets to potentiate the targeted tissue really with anything that I'm doing now that I want to try and hit. So whether it be a seated machine fly or whether it's an incline, depending if you're biasing the sternal or the clavicular head of the chest, and then just prioritizing where I'm going to stick that. Equally, both my push sessions, one of them has a shoulder bias where I'll hit delts first. The other one is a chest bias. And I think it's just having that. And also, volume wise, most people would probably look, I think for the week, on average, the highest throughout a mesocycle that I had in terms of allotted volume to chest was maybe 14 or 15 sets per week across the week. But again, it's looking at the quality of those sets and again, working in close proximity to momentary and mechanical failure so that you are, switching on that mTOR pathway and maximizing anabolic signaling. Whereas I think too many people, we talk about all the time, they just leave quality gains on the table. And it's just that perception of where is failure, where is it not, and not being afraid to fail every now and then, falling short. Even some of those reps, like which, I definitely noticed when you were doing those partials at the end, the rest pause, went back to see, is it empty? Yeah, we're definitely empty. And it's almost like solidifying. I speak about anabolic signaling like a dimming switch, knowing that if you are at that mechanical failure or muscular failure, that switch is turned on as much as you can. And so as a result of that, you're going to see those downstream proteins, being more activated, which is what you need. But I think the main thing is just focusing on quality. There's just so much junk volume. And equally, I was probably guilty of it. Maybe I think we all have been at some point, but now just really prioritizing with everything. It's just quality, and hopefully it's going to pay off. I guess we'll find out in a few weeks' time.
I guess for me, like that's been the biggest difference over the last couple of years is doing less sets than what I used to do, but making sure that every set is absolute quality with the highest intensity has made all the difference. It's definitely made all the difference. So, we've spoken about some training programs that we've seen written down where they've just got ridiculous amounts of sets and we just know the quality is not there. And as we always preach about on here, about how important intensity is, and if you've got copious amounts of sets within your workout, your intensity is just not going to be there. You're not going to have quality within your training, so you're just not going to get that density that comes along with intensity. So
intensity creates density is starting to make its way around.
Definitely. I think it's our first t-shirt. It's got to be our first t-shirt slogan. It's for sure.
Might be my next tattoo, man. That's how serious I'm taking it.
Intensity creates density. Absolutely.
I want to move into some questions because we got a fair few. So the first one I got was whether comp prep coach can also be a lifestyle coach. So do any of you boys coach people that aren't in comp prep?
Yep.
Absolutely.
What do you think one of the biggest differences are between coaching someone that's in comp prep compared to lifestyle?
I think the biggest difference I see in terms of the feedback I get is probably the level of adherence. But in terms of the style of coaching or the methodology of coaching, I wouldn't say that really anything changes. The only difference is, you don't have such a specific goal as like a show. And equally, for someone who is a lifestyle client whose goal is weight loss, you're probably not having to push as far. But the methodology and the mechanics of how you manage it are exactly the same. All of my lifestyle clients use the same tracker, give me the same data in terms of feedback for how their week's been with, energy, sleep, stress, steps. So there really is no difference. It's just probably how far the goal gets pushed. Is the main difference. Equally, I've got some lifestyle clients who are just as adherent as comp prep clients as well. And for me, I think having a mixture of both allows me to be a better coach. It allows me to relate to, things that are going on both sides of the spectrum, not just being a competitor. And that's why I still like to do face-to-face as well, just to get that third component in my tool belt too. But I don't really change anything in the specifics of how I coach either. Just the goal seems to be different.
How about you, Scotty?
Yeah, I think it's important to manage expectations. So my expectations, let's say someone like Ethan, who's deep in prep, who's going for a pro card versus I've got probably maybe 6 or 7 lifestyle-based athletes or clients that have no desire to compete. And if I compare, I'll use a female. I think she listens to the podcast. Her name's Ella. But when I first started working with her online about 6 months ago, her nutritional literacy was very, very different to where it is now. And so my guidance and my approach to coaching her was not about, you've got to follow this, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. It was about putting in place habits and systems. She's also a mum that are going to be conducive and they're going to allow her to be successful and not feel like if she didn't get every single thing perfect, like I'd expect Ethan, everything needs to be ticked off because there's so much at stake. If I'm asking her to compare the way that she is going about it and her approach to Ethan's, the difference is night and day. So ultimately, if I have that expectation or I place that on her, she's never going to feel like she's making any progress and obviously constantly feeling like that she's failing, versus putting in place that I want you to limit yourself to only 3 off-plan meals this week when she's used to having meals out originally at least 4 or 5 times a week. Cool, we tick that box. Now let's see if we can go through a whole week without actually consuming a meal off plan and following these intakes. And one of the reasons that following a nutrition plan is such a powerful piece is it helps the lifestyle client learn and educate their nutritional literacy as it improves. It makes your job a lot easier. So if you're like in your last meal when you've got 50 carb, 10 protein, blah, whatever it is, 10 grams of fat, I want you to pull 5 of those grams of fat from this meal and that meal and that meal, and we're going to allocate it to this end of the meal. If you're talking about someone who's never tracked or has any understanding on nutrition, they're going to be so overwhelmed. But now I can say to her, when I make increases or reductions, we're going to add in an extra 25 grams of carbohydrate. You're going to decide where we allocate it. Just bear in mind, obviously, factoring in the amount of carbohydrate per meal. And, she's gone from someone who was always overweight to now understands optimal dosage per feeding time, how much protein she needs to have, not having too much fat around high carbohydrate meals because it delays gastric emptying. But all of those conversations and equally the way that I speak to her and the language that I use is very, very different now to what it was 6 months ago. So I think it's about putting in place systems that allow that person to get closer to their goal, but also managing expectations and obviously understanding that not everyone is going to do things the way that we want to do them and the most optimally, but equally they're not trying to get shredded glutes and get on stage and, win pro cards. They're trying to lose 10, 15 kilos, be able to have a glass of wine once a week with their partner, and still be a good parent. So I think just having that balance and obviously managing those expectations and also taking on the role and wearing the hat of really educating. Because I think that if you're a really, really good coach and you invest, and this is something that we all do with our athletes, invest in their education and making sure they understand why you're doing what you're doing, then down the line, it makes it so much easier. Oh, Michael's doesn't want me to put carbohydrate there because he wants me to save that around my training window. So that's why it makes more sense. And he doesn't want me to have 25 grams of peanut butter in my cereal before I train because it's going to delay getting those nutrients into the blood. So that's why. He's not hating on me having peanut butter. He just wants me to have a spoonful of it before I go to bed instead. So I think just being able to compartmentalize all of that makes a big, big difference.
I love all those points that you guys touched on. I think one of the other things to add is that obviously the phases that you take a lifestyle client through will be totally different or not different, but won't be as extreme as what you take a comp prep client through. We're going to push one way in the off season as hard as we can, and we're going to push another way in comp prep as hard as we possibly can. Whereas a lifestyle client's probably more about feeling comfortable when they're hitting their goals and throughout their daily life. Whereas sometimes we have to put people in uncomfortable situations that are competitors, whether it be in the peak of the off season or whether it be in the depths of the prep. Also had another question that's similar. It's about coaching. Now, it was from someone that does listen to the podcast. They sent a really, really nice, beautiful, long message, so I do appreciate it. But she's not a competitor, but she listens to the potty, and she has a female coach that she's found has been invaluable getting a coach, and how much she's learned, not only physically but mentally too. She also also has a partner that trains, but he's got no program, no coach. And she keeps saying that you should get a coach, should get a coach. And he said he'd be more comfortable to maybe get a male coach. The question she's asking is, do males in general, are they more open to getting a coach and being vulnerable with, what they don't know and the fact they may need help? And maybe MJ, this is one for you, because I know we've had this conversation before in the past about how you did a whole lot before you got a coach. Do you find males sometimes aren't as open to females as getting help and getting a coach?
Yeah, I would say 100%, man. Mm-hmm. And I think, if you look at the way I sort of grew my, book of athletes, both competitors and non-competitors, it was definitely female dominant. I feel like females probably from the get-go had a more clear understanding of what they wanted and what they wanted to achieve, and were very quickly able to identify the best and most efficient path in order to achieve that goal. I think a lot of times, and this is very generalized, but I think a lot of times guys will dig their heels in a little bit longer and potentially try and resource this stuff themselves, and maybe jump online and read some things and speak to someone at the gym, and before they are willing to put their hand up and say, actually, I'm just going to get a professional to help me to get to my goal sooner. So I think they are less willing, and I think females have demonstrated that. In my book, Scott, you might have a different opinion. You've probably got a few more guys than me, maybe, but I find that females are very open to getting a coach in.
What do you think, Scotty?
I think it depends on the individual and also the athlete in terms of where they're at. I've probably more had a heavier male following than female. It's probably only really been, I typically tend to get a lot of the fitness and the figure athletes that are on the female side, mainly because I don't normally feel that I'm best aligned to bikini type athletes. But I think it just depends on where they're at. And I think for a lot of guys, it's just, there is that element of vulnerability of, whether it's just the inner masculinity within a man that doesn't like to be told by another man. But I think it depends on the person as well, because we're all men, we all are constantly learning, and at no stage, at least I know, at no stage am I ever content that I think I know everything. I think as soon as you have that mindset with anything, then that's it. You're running on the spot, and you're not going to improve. You're not going to get better. So I think constantly being open to feedback and to new information is really important with whatever you do. But I think it just depends on the individual. I think once you have a bit of a record, I think personally competing and having a little bit of success on that front probably helped me a little bit in terms of people can see if they know that you can walk the walk. Like, let's say that I've never competed, but I'm telling you, you should do this and this is how you get lean. But what would you know? You've never done it. But I think when you can show that I've been where you are, I know how to get inside out lean, I know how to live in that environment, I know how it feels. There's that element of relatability, which is why I think as a physique coach, at some point you have to have walked in their shoes. And equally, I don't think you can coach an athlete. Like, I don't see how, if you were a female coach that competes in bikini, but you haven't gotten inside out peeled like what's required for fitness or figure, I would find it hard that you would be able to have that same relatability to a figure or a fitness athlete because you haven't walked in their shoes. Whereas you guys both, fitness doesn't make a difference for girls, whether they're lean or not, in terms of you guys have experienced that. You've been inside out, peeled, shredded glutes. You know how crappy that feels. So it's like, I know how you feel and I can relate. And equally, when you're with a guy, it's like, I know how you're feeling, or it's like, you think you're hurting now, take another 2 or 3 kilos from where you are. And that's how far down the rabbit hole I've been. So it's like, and so there's that element of trust and relatability that this person gets and understands where I'm coming from.
Yeah. I think the best thing I could say is always encourage that person to just have a chat, have a consult. One of the biggest things that we hear often, Scott, I'm sure the same, is you'll catch up with a guy, you'll talk about the plan, you'll show the systems that we use, you'll talk about the process, you'll map out, or periodize the year ahead, and they'll be like, oh God, I wish I had done this sooner. So sometimes it's just about taking that first step. So I think just, encouraging to take that first step, or potentially encouraging to reach out and book a consult, could be something that'd be very useful for someone who's in that space and maybe dragging their heels and thinks that maybe it's not what they need, when it is.
I think you should always have a consult. Like, you need to make sure, and even equally for us, I'll never, if someone's like, oh, I want to do classic and this is when I want to do it, have you got spots? I'll never ever just ever say, yep, no dramas, I got space for you. I'll always want to have a consult, because equally as a coach, want to make sure that this individual is coachable and that their values more or less will align with mine. You can show them your system, what you're doing, how you do it. And there are times where you just have to say, and it's happened to me a couple of times in the last few months, where I've had to just say, I reckon maybe you're probably going to be better suited to someone else with perhaps different expectations, etc. I really want to do season A 2024. It's like, well, I don't see how that's possible. Like all of my season A 2024 guys wrapped up their pre-prep phases, a couple of months ago, and you're, 25 kilos over stage weight. We're not in a position to have a contest prep that's going to be conducive to you enjoying it or having a really good experience. Whereas if you look at 2025 season B, that's where my head's at. And I think that's what you need, because there's still a lot of gaps. And equally, sometimes people don't want to hear that, which is totally fine. If you are a first timer or you are a newbie though, having a really good coach early is only going to expedite it so much faster. Like if it was me and I was starting out, I would put ego to the side and be like, I'm going to find someone who's someone that works with someone or that trains someone is where I want to be. And spending 6 months or a year or whatever, that is how you're going to level up. That's partly why, majority of our athletes a lot of mine they're all coaches themselves. And it's like, you need to have that so that you can constantly improve. And why wouldn't you want to fast track it?
Mm-hmm.
If someone's like, if you're going to go and work with John Jewett or with Hani Rambot, if there was an opportunity to do that, someone said, oh, Hani's going to be in Melbourne this weekend and he's offering whatever it is, it's $5,000, but it's like you're living, eating, breathing with him for like 72 hours. Full transparency, I would absolutely pay that. Not that I am invested in getting into that route of pharmacology, but this is a guy that year after year breeds champions. And so there's definitely got to be something in his methodology, his approach, his values. How does he bring all of that to fruition? And for me, that would be a worthy investment, because you're with, if arguably one of the best coaches ever. So why would you not want to expose yourself to that?
Anyone that wants to tag Hani in this and get
Hani, come to Montmorency, bro. I'll put you up.
If anyone can get this to Hani,
tag him in the feed there, bro, and then tell him CBum as well. Like I'll host all of you guys. Maybe we can get him on the potty.
I'll tag him. I'll do it. I'll do it.
Yeah, do it. And then I'll send him a DM and say, hey, bro,
put the timestamp for Hani too.
I've got a room for you, plenty of food, gym you can train out of.
Oh yeah.
What are your thoughts of a first-time competitor becoming a posing coach after one show? Scotty's got a smile and shaking his head.
This is a pet peeve of mine. I reckon maybe there's a few people that have been asking me about this lately. I find it baffling that someone can do a show or do one season and now they're a comp prep coach or they're a posing coach, when 6 months earlier they had no idea. I've been in this space for well over 10 years now, and I don't teach posing. I know how to pose and I know the basics of it, but it's not an element of expertise that I would say that I'm really, really strong in. So I would rather pass it on to someone who lives it, eats it, breathes it. Donna, Vicky, whoever it may be. Like, you want to give it to someone, Pete Harwig, who knows their craft inside out. So I think if you've done a bikini show last season and now all of a sudden you are a posing coach, I think you need to have a good hard look at yourself. I don't think you should be doing it, because it's not right. You don't have that element of expertise. I always use the mechanic example. If I can change an oil filter, which I can, doesn't mean I'm going to go over and say, hey, MG, your water pump broke. Man, just bring it over. I'll fix it. Wouldn't have a clue. I'd ring you and ask you how to fix it. Stay within your scope of practice. Like, there's nothing wrong with wanting to get into that.
Yes.
But equally, go and shadow the best people in the industry. Go and shadow Donna or Vicky or whoever it is and learn your craft.
Yeah, that's what I'd recommend. Just like when we give advice to people that want to become comp prep coaches, is build up to that. What do you think about people who do one show and then never compete again?
Yeah, I think it just depends on what that reason is. Like at the end of the day, everyone competes for different reasons. And there's no doubt about it that there's a part of this industry and there's so many competitors who are just like, I want to tick it off my list. I want to do a show. I want to tick it off my bucket list. And you know what? It's a lot to go through. It's a lot to go through and put yourself through to just compete once. So for me, I don't see the point in it. Like, I'm in it because I love it and I want to live and breathe it. And, for me, it's about the lifestyle. We spoke about it just on last episode. It's not about the show day. It's about everything that makes me a bodybuilder is the bit that I love. And competing is just one part of it. But I just think that because of how social media glamorizes competing and how fancy it looks to be shredded, so many people just do it once. Equally, if you're someone who's done it, live and breathe it, but for health reasons, you can't continue it, no quarrel, mad respect here. Like you have to look after and prioritize your health first and foremost, because there's no doubt that there are parts to being, inside out peeled that aren't necessarily healthy. We always talk about, there's definitely safe and efficient ways to do it. But I think you got to think about what your why is. It's something we've spoken about 100 times for most of us. And I was listening to a podcast this morning, which actually Meave was on, and they asked, what would you do if you had someone who came to you and was like, oh, I want to do a comp? And, her response was, well, for most people, doing a comp is way out of your league. Your diet's not correct yet. You haven't shown any ability to be disciplined. There's so many things that you're not doing. And I don't think that jumping into a comp prep is a great decision for you. It's going to affect your physical health, your mental health, and you're potentially not someone who's ready. So I think, you need to look at why you got into it. But if you're just doing it, if you're just doing one comp to tick it off your list, I know that's not something that really sits right with me. I think it's a long-term game, and these things take time to produce results at the same time. We just spoke about Scott's physique and the changes he's made over the last 2 years. That's a 2-year transformation for someone who's already at the top of their game. It's a long
Actually, 3, bro.
There you go. It's a long haul to make improvement, and it's not a sport that you can get short-term gratification from. It takes time. Unless you're a genetic freak, you need to pay your dues. And it goes back to exactly what we were saying before about being a posing coach or being a comp prep coach. Same thing. You got to pay your dues. When you have lived it, breathed it, walked it, you will reap the benefit. And you just got to be patient. Like, why are you not doing that next comp? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, and I hope the answer is because I had a bad experience. I just hope that that's not the case.
For sure. Yeah.
Will we be at the Ballarat ICN show, and can we analyze the results? Yes, I'll be there. You'll be there, MG? Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, I think I've got 6 or 7 that day, so I'll definitely be there.
Yep.
But I won't be able to watch every division. But definitely, if there's someone specific who really wants us to have a look, and you can send through to the potty so we can try and time it to make sure that we watch, we'd love to.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll do what I did last time, where we'll tell everyone the shows that we're going to be at, and we can review them. And if they want for us to look out for them, just tell us who they are, and we'll look out for them and we'll give them feedback individually. But we can definitely do that. No problem at all. Who can I message to help out with picking categories for A and B? That'd be MG. You can reach out to MG. Why don't people mention INBA much? There's always people mentioning ICN, NBA, A and B. Why don't you see a lot of people mentioning INBA much? So just to give some people a little bit of a backstory, for those who haven't been in the sport for that long, INBA was probably one of the biggest federations in Australia. And then there was whatever issue happened, whatever falling out happened. There's a lot of different stories, but the people that were in INBA all picked up and made their own federation and called it ICN. So all the ICN people used to be INBA. And then INBA had to start from scratch again. There was no promoters, there was no president, there was no representation in Australia. So they had to start from scratch again. And then it just never got to the size of current ICN, AMB, and NBA. So that's probably why you don't hear much about it too more, is because it's not as big as those big three, and people mostly talk about those big three and put people in those big three. Is there anything else you guys want to add to that?
I think they actually have a show coming up, don't they?
Yeah, well, they just had a show in New Zealand that was like a sort of a world type show. I knew someone who would ever competed. But yeah, I think another one of the reasons is, if you think about the industry, there's not a heap of coaches that are sort of, 6 years experience plus that are comp prep coaching, right? It is, reasonably young industry in Victoria, definitely. So a lot of the coaches that are comp prep coaches now just weren't coaching when INBA was big. So you only know what you know, right? And you're only going to put athletes in shows that you've had experience with or that you've competed at yourself. So, I think that's the issue of any Fed who's, starting up fresh, is you're dealing with coaches who just haven't experienced your federation, and they're going to stick with what they know out of comfort, because we all like to live in our comfort zone.
Yeah. Also, too, is, one of the first questions I ask people when I have a consult is, what federations do you know? Have you been to any shows? Do you have any friends that have competed in them? Have you competed? And I've never had the answer of INBA. I know all about INBA and I want to do INBA. I've never ever had that answer. So I normally get people to investigate the federations, find out what they know, and then obviously assess their physique and see where they'd best fit. And ideally, you want people, the client, the competitor, the athlete, to have a big percentage of the decision of where they want to compete, because in the end, they're spending the money, they're spending the time. They want to be in a federation that they like, they love, they enjoy, and they want to have that experience. So, and obviously a smaller federation just doesn't get that airtime. Not many people know about it. But not to say there's anything wrong with it. So if you compete in it, that's perfectly fine, because this person that asked that question is competing in that federation. Okay, let's move on to some other things. So I might give you this one, Scotty. Bananas for potassium whilst on blood pressure medication. Is there a risk with adjusting your sodium potassium levels with adding potassium related foods when you're on blood pressure medication?
Well, if you're taking blood pressure medication, I'm assuming that you have high blood pressure, not low blood pressure. And in which case, if you did have high blood pressure, then typically you will usually have a higher blood sodium osmolality versus if you're obviously if you're hyponatremic, so if you have low blood sodium, then obviously you're not going to have that same pressure, which is why when we're getting close to getting on stage, we push in acute dose of sodium to increase blood pressure. And obviously, as we're pumping up, it presses against all the vascular tissues and makes you look crazy, freaky, shreddy. But I think if you're taking on potassium, as long as you're taking copious amounts, it's fine because essentially they're kind of working in opposing ways in the sense that obviously sodium and potassium, they're both really important electrolytes. But I don't obviously know what medication this person is taking. So don't obviously take this as medical advice, but unless you are taking copious amounts of potassium, I wouldn't foresee that to be a problem. But equally, like anything, if you're consuming large amounts of any kind of electrolyte, whether it's sodium, potassium, magnesium, any kind of mineral, you're just going to excrete it when you go to the bathroom. So your body, that's the role of your kidneys. It regulates your electrolyte levels and fluid balance, very, very, very tightly. So if you've got too much of something, then you'll see secretion of hormones within the body to help let your body know that there's too much of that within circulation, in which case you'll excrete it out. But to simplify that, no, I don't think it's a problem.
Yeah, I think if you're on blood pressure medication and you're having a banana a day, you're probably going to be safe.
Even if you're having 2 or 3.
Yeah.
My daughter has like 3 bananas a day.
Yeah. I'm guessing that's the question.
She's not on blood pressure medication, but
yeah, I think people just need to keep it simple and make sure they have enough of each electrolyte and at the right ratio. And if you have too much, the body will work it out. It's probably better to have too much than not enough.
Yeah, I think one of the things we see as coaches is, we start with people, we'll have consults and it's like, oh, I'm taking this supplement, I'm taking this, magnesium, vitamin D, all this array of things. It's like, oh, cool. Did you have bloods, or like, why are you on this? It's like, I'm just trying to feel a bit better or be a bit healthy. It's like, well, unless you know what it is that, you're actually deficient in, you could potentially be taking something for no good reason, or, taking something that you actually don't need and, at a point may start to be detrimental to your health. It's like, for someone like me who has hemochromatosis, it's like if I just started feeling shit and tired and I'm like, oh, maybe it's my iron, I'll start supplementing with iron. And then all of a sudden, I start to build up levels that become, toxic in my body, right? Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of people are just taking stuff because they think it's going to make them feel a little bit better. But like a question for Scott is like, what would be something that you'd go through with a new client in terms of the investigation you do as to what type of supplementation you may ask them to do at a first consult, and what type of things you think very generalized most people probably need, or a lot of people are deficient in, that you see regularly?
So I'll always, during a consult, in my screening form, I'll have a supplementation questionnaire component where I'll ask what they're taking, why they're taking it. But I think first and foremost, people take supplements. Everyone thinks that supplements are the golden aid. But I think if anyone was to ever take anything away, that Eric Helm's pyramids are so good in terms of what is at the top of the pyramid versus what is the bottom and the foundation. But with anything, I'm a big advocate of a food first approach. And equally, you should only really be supplementing if you cannot get what you need, in terms of those endogenous vitamins and minerals, whatever it may be. If you can't actually, your body can't produce them, or you're not getting them via food, then maybe you need to look at adding that in. But otherwise, if you're deficient in something, then for sure you need to take them. So getting a blood panel done is obviously going to identify that. But otherwise, if you're eating a really well-balanced diet and energy availability is not compromised, then you really shouldn't need to supplement anything unless, like, let's say things like fatty fish. So omega-3s, I don't eat salmon and I don't like to eat a lot of fatty fish, but I have 4 grams of fish oils that have a high EPA, DHA value every single day, whether it's in season, off season, doesn't make a difference. So that's something that I would also supplement. Equally, at the moment, in winter. And again, you guys know I'm a big advocate of supplementing with vitamin D3, but also there's a really good body of literature that in countries that don't have really warm climates in winter, we don't get the same exposure to the sun, that we are likely to be a little bit more deficient in vitamin D3. And in which case, we know that there's a correlation between supplementing with that and an improvement in terms of fighting upper respiratory tract infections, sore throat, any kind of pathogens that sort of make their way around. So for me, for the sake of taking 5 milligrams, or if it's 10 or whatever it might be, IU of that per day, why would you not do that? Again, factoring in that it's a fat soluble vitamin, so you need to have it with a meal that contains fat. But other than that, like, 5,000 IU of vitamin D3, fish oils, if you're not supplementing with it, I think unless you're not able to get it from your diet, and unless you're deficient in any of those vitamins and minerals or antioxidants, then you shouldn't really need to be supplementing it, with the exception of creatine, because obviously that's, if you're a lifting or a strength enthusiast and you want to, and there's also a lot of other potential benefits that are coming with that as well, even for people just to prevent sarcopenia, osteoporosis, improving bone mineral density, all that sort of stuff. But to simplify it, they're probably the main ones. Fish oils, if you're not eating fatty fish, but that also falls under the banner if you're not getting it within your diet. And then I think vitamin D3, the whole multivitamin or vitamin C, most people don't realize that the RDA of vitamin C is like so minute, and virtually everyone would get that within their daily intake. So I think people probably waste too much of that. And equally, if you've got too much of something, it doesn't give you immunological, protection, which a lot of people think that it does. You can't boost immunity, but you can prevent deficiency in certain micronutrients. So I think if you view it on that front, it's a lot more complex. It's a lot more simplified rather than complex. Like, I had one of my athletes DM me yesterday saying, "Oh, can I start taking vitamin B12 for energy?" And I'm like, "Are you deficient in it?" Because cobalamin is obviously beneficial and your body uses it via exercise metabolism, the glycolytic pathway and whatnot. But if you're not deficient in it and you're consuming a well-balanced diet, which this individual is, despite being on lower calories, you could take it if you really wanted to, but it's not really going to do it. It's not going to be like I'm having a Monster energy drink and now I've got energy. But there's almost like, oh, someone told me that that's what gives you more energy, when, it couldn't be further from the truth.
So you're almost creating for yourself just a really expensive urine.
Yeah, basically, there's no need to. Like, unless you're deficient in something, or if you refuse to eat vegetables, then you're probably going to need to supplement with something that's going to give you those vitamins and minerals that you're not getting within your diet. And also, I think if you are supplementing, understanding what are water soluble versus fat soluble. So vitamins A, D, E, K, fat soluble vitamins. So we need to make sure we're consuming them with a meal that contains fat to optimize absorption, versus obviously B and C. It doesn't really make a difference.
Good information.
Yeah, and when you think about it, like everything you said about making sure you get enough fruits, vegetables, that should be the foundation of your diet, even when your calories are super low. Firstly, because they give you so much volume, right? So the base of your diet should be your protein sources and then all your fruits and veg. You shouldn't be trying to get all your carbohydrates from things that don't have nutrients in it, like rice cakes, all your wheat flour stuff. You should make sure that you have enough of those things first and then build upon that. If you need more calories and more carbs, then build the stuff that doesn't have a lot of nutrients in it just to get your carbohydrates in. So yeah, even when in the depths of prep, when you are on low calories, low carbohydrates, you should still be able to fit in the servings of vegetables and fruits that you do need within your diet, for sure. We had a question about thoughts on aminos. Are they beneficial, or is it just an excuse to drink more water?
Branched or essential?
They just said aminos, so answer it how you want from that perspective.
I think branched chain aminos are it's an excuse to drink flavored water. And equally, unless you're training at a time that warrants boosting, amino acidemia levels within your blood, like I've given examples here. There's a time and place to take EAAs, where if you're training early in the morning and you don't have a huge protein feeding, or you're getting on an aeroplane and you just want to keep your amino acidemia levels within your blood, constant, so that you constantly got a flow of, because we're constantly in that flux of breaking down and then obviously rebuilding in terms of muscle protein synthesis. So I think unless you fall under that category, then food first approach. Like, yes, they're a complete protein source. So from that aspect, they're good, but equally, I mean, what is a I use them sometimes if I'm in a position like when we're on the plane.
Yep.
I had that in my water. At the end of the day, I knew that it wasn't realistic for me to have a whole heap, but I was able to get 20 grams of protein in just by drinking that with the water. But it wasn't because they're golden or supreme. If I had the ability to just eat some chicken breast like there and then, I would rather do that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more just for convenience, but equally they're an expensive endeavor if you can afford to pay for them and you want to have them. Does it make a difference when if you're trying to do everything like perfectly, optimally? Does consuming some EAAs throughout your training session, is it going to be beneficial? Maybe. It's not going to be deleterious to you. So if you can afford it, like if you're working with professional athletes, say footballers, let's go away from bodybuilding, a lot of those guys probably do have some of that and some electrolytes within their space because there's turning over a lot of energy. Is it beneficial? Yeah, maybe it is. But if you're getting in a really good protein feeding beforehand and then you're going to train, most of the time people don't realize that and in fact, Alan Argon actually just in his new monthly newsletter did a meta-analysis speaking on that about the importance of do we like the anabolic window post-training. And it's still that meta-analysis just confirmed and just supported the fact that if you've got a really good protein feeding, like within an hour to 90 minutes before you train and then you resistance train, it elongates that spike when we see muscle protein synthesis stay elevated for up to like 36 hours. So I'm not saying you want to wait that long, but is taking on 10 grams of essential amino acids really going to make that much of a difference? Probably not. But if you want to take that extra 0.1%, then and you've got the funds to liberate toward it, then go nuts. But for the most part, I think it's probably a waste of money.
Yeah. I'd say this to some clients. If you're struggling to drink water and putting a little bit in there is going to help you drink more water, then I'm happy for you to do that other than putting some kind of sugar-free cordial in there or some other crap. I'd rather you put that in there. You get that little bit of a 1% that we're talking about, plus you get a bit of a flavor and you drink some more water. So,
have you guys seen some of the BCAA memes?
No.
The guy washing his car and it's like bucketing down and he's washing his car. He's like, me drinking aminos on a bulk.
There's already enough coming down. There's already enough in the system.
Like, yeah. You're not going to notice it.
All right, last one about SUPPS while we're on this topic. Sleep aids. So supplements to help with sleep. The ashwagandha, melatonin are probably the typical ones that I normally recommend. Anything else that you guys recommend?
Good sleep hygiene, man. Getting off your phone early, putting your phone on Do Not Disturb, not having every light and TV on in the house. Just trying to actually get into a routine where you are genuinely trying to wind down and especially staying off tech.
What's your wind down routine, MG?
So me and I have got this thing that as soon as dinner's served, phones go away. Whether it's 7:30, 8 o'clock, 8:15, just depends on what time we both get home. As soon as dinner's served, phones are away. So we really don't touch our phone after that. It goes on charge. We do start typically very early. So, we're always getting in bed where we're putting ourselves in a position where the minimum that we will get is 7 hours.
Yep.
Now, some mornings it starts super early and sometimes it takes a little while to fall asleep, but we're always making sure that we're getting into bed at a time that allows somewhere between 7 and 8 hours, non-negotiable. And sometimes that means, man, we'll come home, we'll have dinner, we'll sit on the couch for 15 minutes and it's time to start that routine. Brush your teeth, get into bed, talk in bed a little bit, but we're always putting ourselves ahead of the game in that sense. But again, it's, lights are dimmed down, tech is away, and TV goes off pretty quickly.
Yeah. How about you, Scotty? Any wind down routine for bed?
No, it just depends. Hopefully, normally once kids are in bed, I have a bad habit of unfortunately eating lately a bit later, but that's usually if there's issues with getting children in bed when they need to get to sleep. But once I've eaten, always try and make sure there's at least 90 minutes between consuming that meal and sleeping. But my absolute cutoff is I need to be in bed asleep by 10 o'clock. So same thing, but equally, whenever we're watching TV downstairs, even as soon as I walk into the house to just commence that, letting my body know that I'm no longer staying switched on, I need to power down. I'll turn all of the lights on dimmers, the kitchen lights. I might just put the foot lighting on or the LED so that it's like it illuminates the kitchen so I can see what I'm doing, but equally it's a darker environment and when we're watching TV. And then maybe when I'm getting ready, when I know I'm within half an hour, I'll turn those lights off and equally either Jen or I will usually just call it at 9 or 9:30. Let's go. We've got to go to bed. Same thing. Clean your teeth, you have a chat, and then hopefully your children don't wake up every 2 hours like mine did last night.
MG, what you got to look forward to next year? Hopefully not.
Yeah, bro.
Hopefully it's all good.
You're going to be like, man, I'm so tired. Like,
Can't wait.
equally, exactly right. You get through it. But Sleep as much as you can, bro, because you will never, ever, 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 ever sleep like that again. Ever.
Just to make sure.
Ever.
Never.
Ever. Some mornings, sometimes you'll wake up and there's a foot like in the middle of your back. Like this morning, I had that with Harvey. Are you going to work, Dad? Are you going to have a shower? Can I come and watch you? And Jenny's like, yes, go. But as long as you're not waking me up. But it's all in good fun. But equally, sleep as much as you can, bro. Seriously.
Oh man, me and I are going away this weekend. We've got that little secluded getaway where there's no internet, no phones, no.
The spa that overlooks the paddock, yeah?
Literally just the spa that overlooks the mountain.
Yeah.
And you got to heat it with
that's bomb.
there to heat them up. There's a fire pit, there's a barbecue. We're going to bring all of our food, cook everything. Like we will not leave this, 20 by 10 meter place for 2 whole nights.
Agreed.
I just cannot wait. I feel a little bit sorry for me because I think she can't take advantage of that, 40-degree spa like she was able to last time, obviously having little bubs inside, but I will certainly be taking advantage of it.
Is it like a glamping tent?
No, it's a cabin. So it's it's got a shower. It looks like a 1-bedroom unit. It's just up on a deck. It's elevated on the hill. It's fully fenced in, so we're able to bring the dog. She can't escape. There's animals everywhere, horses, all types of cattle. There's sheep. There's everything around, and you just cannot hear anything. You cannot. It's just so secluded, man. But equally, that part of the thing that's super appealing to me is the no tech, the no internet, the no reception. I'm just going to bring a Bluetooth speaker. We've got a couple of books each that we've already put aside. We tend to read, one a day each there because there's not a lot to do, which is nice. Set up a little rug on the grass, and hopefully we can just have, if we can have 2 or 3 hours of sunshine each day, that'll just be like everything that I could want at this point in time.
Sounds like a dream. And obviously we've got, the season starting up. We've got a fair bit of travel involved with some shows that we have to go to. So it's good to have a nice relax.
For sure, man. And for us, 2 nights is massive. So, and it's also Meve's birthday. So happy birthday to Meve, the 5th. What does that make it? Tuesday.
All right, let's finish off on one more comp prep related one. Do you recommend reducing protein and fats the day before the show and on show day? We may have spoken about this in the past, how normally during that time, we're going through a carb up process. So sometimes we may reduce protein a little bit, and we'd probably be really, really careful about where we place the fats in and around our carb up. So, we might put more fats towards later part in the day. So you can hold on to that carbohydrate overnight. Don't put it around training because, as we said before, you want to try to get that carbohydrate into the system and not slow down digestion. But are they pretty much the main points, Scotty? Reason why you you reduce protein. You don't necessarily reduce fat. You probably want to put it in certain areas and certain meals.
I think it would just depend on where the athlete's at and have you front loaded them or are you aggressively backloading them? Because if you're aggressively backloading them, you probably want to be mindful of fat in the sense that if you're pushing in too much at certain times, you're going to delay gastric emptying. You're not going to be able to get the nutrients into the blood. So you're not going to be able to obviously partition that. But equally, there's also a time and a place where it's important to have them. And I think if you've got someone you've got a look that you like, then pushing in larger amounts of fats helps to allow everything to stick. If you're someone like MG is one of those people, I'm definitely one of those people where they just burn through carbohydrate. You got to hold the look. You'll usually have to push in a bit more towards the end, maybe the night before, the meal before you go to bed, just to be able to slow things down. But equally, if you've got someone that's truly peeled, you want to top up intramuscular triglycerides as well. So if you work off, it depends on the person, but normally around about 1% of your skeletal tissue, you're looking at intramuscular triglycerides. So if you work off, say someone weighs 80 kilos, that's their lean mass. So when you account for all body composition, everything else, so you're looking at roughly around about 80 grams of fat to top that up. Now, bearing in mind that if you're just sitting around, you're moving around, you're breaking down, obviously you're more likely to be using fats to be able to fuel that, because typically we're not really going to be chewing through carbohydrate unless we're exceeding that sort of 65% of max heart rate to sort of tap into that glycolytic pathway. So I think you need to factor those things in. You also need to be mindful if you haven't had a high fat diet and then you just push in large amounts, it can cause some disruption to the digestive system, can send you to the bathroom pretty quick. But I think if you're someone who has like 50 grams and then maybe the day before you find a look you like, you might push in 80 or something like that. As long as you're not doing it all in big blouches, maybe your last 2 meals you have 20 grams or 25 grams, and then the rest you're having 7 or 8 spread apart. But there's no like set formula. I think you have to auto regulate it on the fly. And equally, if you feel like, oh, this person's still a bit flat, then I wouldn't be just loading up on fats before bed. I'd be pushing a bit more carb, and then maybe on the last meal, push some more fats with it, make sure that it holds and it sticks, and then get them up at a reasonable hour so that you can assess where they're at. Are they flat? Maybe have they spilled? If you're not sure whether they're full enough, then they probably haven't spilled. But equally, it's always better, I think, if you can almost spill someone the day before and then just use some fats to hold the look, because you're not really doing anything. And then obviously the morning of, just working a bit harder in the pump up, that muscle glycogen is completely saturated, you're topped up. Everyone thinks that, and it's why I've never understood why you want to feed a lot the morning of. If you've got someone that, and again, I can use myself as an example, I can put away a lot of food and I could feel full, but it wouldn't show in my physique. I could still be really, really tight and look really sharp. But equally, how you feel in the stomach. But if you wake up and someone's flat, you've got more time that you can feed them. But equally, if you've got a look that you like, that, oh, maybe we're a little bit spilled, just pump them up a little bit harder that morning. That carbohydrate's not going anywhere. Everyone thinks it just runs off with the wind. It doesn't work like that unless you've been aggressively training. And that's why sometimes when people compete like in the Olympia or the IFBB, when they have morning shows at the night, if they're a bit spilled in the morning, they might be in the gym working a bit harder, trying to sweat, trying to move some of that food and get some of that water out of the way because they have spilled, and then they come back in the night like, wow, they look so much better. And it was just because they obviously pushed in too much.
Yeah. Like we all do the same thing where during that peak week and even that carb up process, we'll actually give them the macro split per meal. So know what protein, carbs and fats they need to have per meal, and also know when they're training to know where to slot in their training session around those meals.
And that's why picks are so important as well.
Yeah, there's a little bit more involved than just low in protein and maybe manipulating fat. There's a little bit more involved in what we do. And we're talking about like trying to peak someone perfectly. If you don't know how to do this properly, just don't try. Just don't touch anything. If you're looking good already, try not to do anything extreme. We're trying to really get those 1%ers out when we try to do these kind of things, because we've had experience in it before.
And with the protein, it's more just about, obviously protein has the highest thermic effect of food, but it does take a little bit longer to digest. I think as long as you're having around about 2 grams, just to be safe, per kilo of body weight. So if I normally have 230, I'd probably have the day before maybe 170. And that's more just so that when all of this carbohydrate's going in, I'm able to digest it, partition it really well and not feel like heavy or bloated. So you might normally have a meal where you have cereal and yogurt, you might have 400 grams, but with this meal, you might only have 250. Or if I have 150 grams of cooked chicken breast and now I'm only having 70, you'll be able to eat the meal with all that rice and be like, I'm still a little bit hungry. That's good feedback, because it's usually the protein that, is giving you that element of satiation, because it does take a little bit longer to digest. But equally, as long as you're getting in, 2 grams per kilo of body weight, it's fine.
Yeah, and for those same reasons, that's probably why we don't use as much protein on the actual show day itself. There might be something in the morning for breakfast. It depends what time you're on in the day, but we try.
You're not going to lose gains in the space of 6 hours. So
yeah, if proteins,
push more in afterwards.
Yeah, if you're not hitting your protein intake for the day on show day, it's all good. You're not going to lose your gains. It's going to be more about the manipulation of those carbohydrates and also like sodium and hydration too. Yeah. All right, boys, we'll leave it there. Again, congratulations to MG on the amazing news.
Appreciate it, bro. Thanks.
And have an amazing weekend away too, mate.
Thanks, boys. Appreciate it.
I'll speak to you soon.